What is up guys, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, what I'll be doing is giving you all some tips you can use to improve at fighting and start winning more fights in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 6 and for future seasons. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. And with that said, let's hop into the video. Now, starting off this video, I want to discuss a bit of the strategy side. So I'm sure there's been a time when you were trying to W key and win a lot of fights in your game, but you just seem to keep dying off spawn, getting poor loot, or generally just getting what seemed like really bad RNG. This is a pretty common occurrence for people trying to W key, and the solution to this problem is honestly really simple. Instead of trying to get a bunch of off-spawn kills, basically you're going to want to focus on landing at a low population spot with maybe 1 to 3 players contesting you, and try to loot up as much as you can before deciding to take any fights. By doing this, you're basically going to be getting good loot to start off the game with, so your fights are going to come down to skill instead of who gets better RNG off spawn. As well as that, since mechanical parts are a huge part of the game, as you probably know, being able to collect them safely and upgrade some weapons will put you way ahead of the people who drop into a risky spot and fight off spawn without getting the chance to upgrade. Overall, focusing on a quiet early game and taking the time to loot, farm, and upgrade should really be part of your strategy, especially in the current meta. The type of drop spot I'd recommend for this playstyle, as I previously said, is one that has a reasonable player count while also having good enough loot and enough mechanical parts to get a few upgrades done. A few specific spots you could try out include Steamy Stacks, which is one of my favorites. You've also got Camp Cod, which might result in some long rotations, but it also has some really good loot and a ton of mechanical parts, as well as Logjam, which has a good amount of materials and typically is only contested by 1 or 2 people in solos. Of course, those are just my preference, and you can feel free to experiment with a bunch of different spots, but those are the 3 that I recommend you start with. The next tip I have for this video is a really important one that you should probably know, especially if you're playing competitive or trying to gain arena points, and that's keeping distance in fights. Since the makeshift and pump shotguns are typically the most commonly used shotguns, it's really not beneficial to jump in your opponent's face like it would be in a spray meta, or even with something like the tactical shotgun or the drum shotgun. Thus, instead, when you're fighting in game, focus on going for the piece control plays, as we'll be discussing in a minute, and doing it from a decent distance to avoid your opponent jumping in your face. Making sure the builds around you are yours as well, that way your opponent can't go for their own piece control, is something that's really helpful to do as well and can help you fight off even some really skilled opponents. Overall though, just try to maintain distance in your fights and ensure that your opponent isn't able to get too up close to you. Focusing on this can really help you win way more fights, especially if you're the type of player who tends to choke in those high pressure situations. The next tip I have for improving at W keying and winning more fights is to continue grinding out as much piece control as you possibly can. Piece control is such an important aspect of the game currently, and any player who can box someone up and get quick kills is already way ahead of the competition. Now, of course, just telling you to practice your piece control doesn't really do much, so I want to recommend an amazing map which should help you go pretty much from a complete beginner to having advanced piece control, given that you practice enough on it. The map that I'm talking about is made by my boy Donwazi, and it's called Donwazi's Piece Control Practice Map V2. In this map, you have 15 different drills, and essentially they're meant to help you build muscle memory and learn a ton of the common piece control techniques in a step-by-step fashion. You also have the piece control free build section, which is one of my favorites, where you can basically just practice using each of the techniques in a maze of builds against sentries. And then finally, you have the combat course, which typically takes around 6 to 7 minutes from my experience, and this course basically takes all the fundamentals of piece control and the drills from the first section of the map, and it puts them all into one course which you can use for practice once you've gotten good with the other parts of the map. This combat course also serves as a pretty solid warm-up since it involves a bunch of useful techniques. Overall though, this is a really nice map to practice on, and is something I definitely recommend you start grinding out if you want to improve your piece control and your fighting skills overall. The code for this map, if you guys want to check it out, is going to be 3612-1685-8799. Moving on from that though, the next tip in this video is one that I've discussed quite a few times on the channel, but one that players still seem to neglect, and that's playing more solo arena. As you probably know, one of the best ways to improve at something is really just to do it, and somehow players that want to win more fights and improve at the game still seem to neglect actually playing the game. Grinding out solo arena is such an important method to improve at fighting. Sure, you can do something like realistic 1v1s or grind out some creative, but that should be a supplement to your in-game practice, not a replacement for it, since those forms of practice don't include optimal looting, farming, rotations, and typically require less focus since you're most likely to just chill and not actually try as hard to win in creative. On the other hand, since there's something on the line in real matches, you're more likely to actually try and thus learn from your mistakes and improve more as a player. Now, I do say solo arena, but if you're trying to focus on competitive, then trios is also an option since those tournaments are constantly out. But my point here is to basically focus on playing more of the real game and make sure that you're not focusing too heavily on creative or other methods, since the real game is obviously what you're practicing for. This may seem like a simple tip at first, course, but this can really be a game changer if you're the type of player who does a bunch of creative and then doesn't seem to improve in actual matches as a result. And I want to say that, of course, creative is a great way to practice and improve and can be really helpful, especially for working on mechanics. But what I'm trying to say is that it shouldn't be used as your main form of practice as opposed to the real game, since it's much more specific and doesn't give you everything you need to reach a higher level. So basically, play more of the real game. It's not that hard. But with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video on how you can win more fights in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 6 and for future seasons. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. As well as that, let me know down in the comments what you thought of this video and what you want to see next on the channel. And with that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.